When Watts said that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived, he was pointing to this simple but transformative idea that the universe doesn't work on our schedule. It works on its own rhythm, a rhythm we belong to, even if we can't always hear it. The idea that everything arrives at the right time invites us to rethink how we see our lives, our struggles, and the pace at which things unfold. We often imagine that life is a race, a linear sequence where we must keep up, stay ahead, or catch opportunities before they slip away. But when we embrace the notion that life presents things precisely when we are ready for them, a new sense of calm and trust begins to grow. Instead of feeling rushed or behind, we begin to understand that timing is woven into the fabric of our experience, often in ways we cannot see until much later. When Alan Watts spoke about the flow of existence, he emphasized that life is more like a dance than a journey from one point to another. In a dance, the value isn't in reaching the end quickly, but in experiencing each movement fully. In the same way, the events we encounter, both the pleasant and the painful, come as part of a larger pattern. They aren't mistakes, nor are they random. They meet us at the moment we're capable of learning, growing, or awakening through them. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually preparation. What feels like a setback is often redirection. What feels like loss can be the space needed for something new to come alive. This principle isn't about passive waiting, it's about alignment. When we force things, we often act from fear, impatience, or a desire to control outcomes. But forcing rarely leads to fulfillment. It leads instead to stress, exhaustion, and disappointment. When we trust that everything arrives at the right time, we develop patience, not the quiet suffering kind, but the grounded, confident kind that knows life is working with us, not against us. This trust shifts our energy. It turns anxiety into curiosity and frustration into openness. Think about the moments in your life when something meaningful arrived unexpectedly. A person who showed up when you needed guidance, an opportunity that appeared when you thought you had run out of options, a lesson that made sense only after you had matured enough to understand it. These moments weren't accidents. They were part of a rhythm, a timing that you could not have orchestrated on your own. This understanding reveals that life is not chaotic, it is responsive. Even challenges follow this principle. We don't face difficulties because we are unlucky or abandoned. We face them because we have reached a point where we can handle them, learn from them, or be transformed by them. Growth rarely comes when everything is comfortable. Yet the discomfort shows up exactly when we're ready to step into a wiser version of ourselves. In this way, life becomes a teacher whose timing is precise and whose lessons are tailored. When we accept that things happen when we are prepared for them, we reduce the pressure to rush. We stop comparing our timeline to others. We release the belief that we must achieve everything quickly or else fall behind. Instead, we move with a quieter confidence, knowing that what is meant for us does not require frantic chasing. It will not pass us by. It will meet us when we are capable of receiving it fully. This is not a passive or wishful mindset. It is an active engagement with reality as it unfolds. It is a recognition that life is not a mechanical process but an organic one, filled with timing we often understand only in hindsight. When we trust this timing, we open ourselves to deeper awareness, greater resilience, and a sense of peace that comes from knowing we are exactly where we need to be, even if we don't yet see the full picture. Alan Watts often challenged the common belief that consciousness is something we carry around inside our heads like a possession. Instead, he invited us to understand consciousness as the very essence of what we are. This shift in perspective changes everything. When we think of consciousness as a tool or an ability, we feel separate from the world, as if we are isolated observers looking out at life from behind our eyes. But when we recognize that we are consciousness, an expression of the universe aware of itself, we see that we are not fragmented pieces, we are inseparable from the whole. This realization dissolves the illusion of separation that fuels fear, anxiety, and the sense of being alone in a vast and indifferent world. To understand consciousness as our fundamental natures is to see that we are not thoughts, emotions, or physical forms, but the awareness in which all those experiences arise. Thoughts come and go, feelings shift, the body changes through time, but the awareness that observes them remains. This awareness is not limited to an individual identity or confined by personal history. It is spacious, boundless, and connected. When Watts spoke of consciousness in this way, he wasn't proposing a philosophical idea for debate. He was pointing to something we can directly experience. We can observe how consciousness operates not as a possession, but as a field in which life happens. Everything we see, hear, feel, and think appears within this field, and we are that field, not just the content inside it. Seeing consciousness as something we are shifts how we relate to the world. Instead of believing that we are small beings moving through an external environment, we begin to understand that the environment and the observer are intertwined. Watts often used metaphors like waves on the ocean or apples on a tree to illustrate this relationship. A wave is not separate from the ocean, it is the ocean expressing itself. In the same way, each of us is the universe expressing itself in a unique form. This understanding brings a sense of belonging and ease, because it removes the pressure to prove ourselves or defend our existence. We do not need permission to be here. Our existence itself is the proof that we belong. When we believe consciousness is something we have, we may fear losing it through sleep, illness, aging, or death. But when we see consciousness as something we are, the fear begins to loosen. Everything that arises within consciousness, even fear itself, is just another temporary experience. Awareness remains. This recognition doesn't demand blind faith. It invites curiosity. It allows us to explore our inner world without judgment, seeing thoughts and emotions as passing phenomena rather than fixed identities. We become more compassionate toward ourselves because we no longer confuse our inner storms with who we truly are. Another profound effect of seeing consciousness as our essence is the way it transforms relationships. When we understand that each person is another expression of the same consciousness, empathy deepens naturally. We begin to listen more, judge less, and connect more authentically. Conflicts soften because we sense the unity underlying the diversity of human experience. It doesn't mean everyone thinks the same way or lives the same story, but it means that beneath all differences lies the same field of awareness. This shared ground brings a quiet sense of unity that doesn't need to be spoken to be felt. Recognizing consciousness as our true nature also redefines freedom. Instead of seeking freedom in external circumstances, we find it in the ability to observe our experiences without being controlled by them. The world may shift, challenges may arise, and emotions may surge, but awareness remains spacious enough to hold it all. This gives life a sense of fluidity rather than resistance. We flow with experience instead of fighting it. In embracing the understanding that we are consciousness itself, we open the door to a deeper, calmer, more connected way of living. We begin to see ourselves not as separate beings struggling through an unpredictable world, but as expressions of a greater whole, moving in harmony with the unfolding of life itself. Trusting the flow of life is one of the most liberating shifts a person can make, yet it can also be one of the most challenging. Much of our suffering comes from believing that we must constantly hold everything together, predict every outcome, and control every twist in the road. We imagine that if we loosen our grip even slightly, things will fall apart. But Alan Watts reminds us that life itself is a fluid process, not a rigid structure. It breathes, moves, changes, and unfolds with or without our constant effort. When we learn to trust this natural movement, we stop fighting against the current and start moving with it. Trusting the flow doesn't mean ignoring responsibilities or abandoning ambition. It means recognizing that forcing outcomes rarely leads to true peace or fulfillment. When we push excessively, we often do so from fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of not being enough. This fear-based effort creates tension not only in our minds, but in our entire lives. We become rigid, anxious, and disconnected from the present moment, believing that salvation lies somewhere in the future. But when we trust the flow, we begin to understand that the present moment is not an obstacle or a waiting room. It is the very place where life is happening. Life's flow is not random. It has its own intelligence, one that we often overlook because we are so focused on our personal timelines. We expect life to unfold according to our plans, but plans are limited. They can only account for what we already know. The flow of life, however, includes the unknown, the unexpected, and the unexplored. When we trust it, we open ourselves to possibilities far beyond what our limited vision could predict. Many of the most transformative experiences in life do not come from our plans, but from the moments that surprise us, redirect us, or push us into new territories. Trusting the flow means allowing these moments to play their part without resistance. One of the obstacles to trusting life is the belief that control equals security. But in truth, control is often an illusion. We can influence our actions, but we cannot dictate outcomes. We can prepare, but we cannot guarantee. When we cling to the illusion of total control, we create unnecessary suffering. By contrast, trusting the flow brings a deeper, more stable form of security, the security that comes from knowing we can adapt, grow, and respond to whatever arises. It shifts our confidence inward rather than outward, away from circumstances and toward our own inner resilience. Trusting the flow of life also means learning to listen. Instead of pushing through noise and tension, we begin to sense subtle cues, intuition, synchronicity, emotional nudges, moments of clarity. These signals often guide us more effectively than logic alone. Life speaks in its own language, and when we slow down, we start to understand it. We notice when it's time to act and when it's time to rest. We sense when a door is closing for a reason and when another is opening. This attunement to the flow creates a sense of partnership between ourselves and the unfolding world rather than an adversarial struggle. Another important aspect of trusting the flow is accepting that change is natural. Nothing in life is static. Relationships shift, careers evolve, dreams transform, and even our inner landscapes change over time. Resistance to change is resistance to life itself. When we flow with change instead of fighting it, we move with greater ease and clarity. We recognize that endings are often beginnings in disguise, and that uncertainty is not a threat but a space where new possibilities can arise. As we deepen our trust in the flow, life begins to feel less like a battlefield and more like a river. We stop exhausting ourselves by swimming upstream and instead learn to move with the current, not passively but harmoniously. In this harmony, we discover a quieter form of strength, one that doesn't depend on force but on openness. We begin to feel supported rather than burdened, guided rather than lost. And in this shift, a sense of peace begins to emerge, not because life becomes easier, but because we stop fighting what is already unfolding perfectly in its own time. Every challenge and lesson that enters our lives comes with a purpose, even if that purpose is not immediately clear. We often experience struggles as interruptions to our plans, disruptions that throw us off course, or obstacles that block our progress. But when viewed through a deeper lens, challenges are not random burdens, they are invitations to grow. They appear at the exact moment we are capable, whether we realize it or not, of learning from them, expanding because of them, or transforming through them. This perspective does not remove the discomfort that difficulties bring, but it gives that discomfort direction and meaning. Challenges play a unique role in shaping who we become. Growth rarely takes place in total comfort. Comfort may keep us safe, but it does not stretch us or reveal our deeper strengths. It is often the moments of pressure, uncertainty, and struggle that uncover our resilience, sharpen our awareness, and deepen our understanding of ourselves. A challenge forces us to see what we may have overlooked, to confront beliefs we've outgrown, to break habits that no longer serve us, or to discover courage we didn't know we had. Without these moments, our lives might remain predictable, but they would also remain small. Challenges enlarge us. When we encounter a difficult situation, our first reaction is often to resist it. We ask why this is happening, why now, why us? But this resistance usually amplifies our suffering. Acceptance, however, creates space. It allows us to explore the challenge with clarity instead of panic. Acceptance does not mean liking the situation or pretending everything is fine. It means recognizing that what has arrived has a reason for being here. It invites us to look deeper, to observe what the challenge is showing us about ourselves, our fears, our values, our limits, and our potential. Every lesson comes wrapped in emotion. Sometimes it arrives as frustration, grief, uncertainty, or disappointment. These feelings are not signs that we are failing. They are signs that something important is unfolding. Emotions are teachers in their own right. They reveal what matters to us, where we feel vulnerable, and what we have not yet healed. When we face a challenge with openness rather than avoidance, we allow these emotional lessons to surface, and through them we gain self-awareness. This awareness becomes the foundation for wiser choices, healthier relationships, and a clearer sense of direction. Challenges also help us develop qualities that cannot be learned in comfort: patience, resilience, humility, compassion, and perseverance. These qualities deepen our character and strengthen our ability to navigate the complexities of life. When we emerge from a difficult experience, we often realize that we are more capable than we previously believed. We gain confidence not from avoiding hardship, but from moving through it. This inner confidence becomes a steady source of strength in future challenges. Another important truth is that lessons repeat themselves until we learn what they are meant to teach. If we ignore a message, life often brings a similar situation again. Sometimes louder, sometimes more intense, until the lesson becomes impossible to overlook. This is not punishment, it is persistence. Life is committed to our growth even when we are hesitant. When we finally understand the lesson, the pattern dissolves, and we move forward with new clarity. Challenges also have a way of redirecting us. What feels like a setback may actually be a course correction. A door closing may be guiding us to a door we would never have considered. Many of the most meaningful shifts in life occur because a challenge forced us to change direction. The discomfort of the moment becomes the catalyst for a better path, a deeper alignment, or a new chapter that we could not have imagined earlier. When we embrace the understanding that every challenge carries a lesson, we shift from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What is this here to teach me?" This simple shift transforms struggle into growth, pain into wisdom, and uncertainty into possibility. It doesn't make challenges easy, but it makes them purposeful. And in that purpose, we find strength, clarity, and a deeper trust in the unfolding of our lives. Letting go of anxiety about the future begins with recognizing how much of our suffering comes not from what is happening right now, but from imagined scenarios that have not occurred. The mind has a powerful ability to create stories about what could go wrong, what might fall apart, or what we may lose. These stories feel real because they come with emotion, but they are projections, not truths. Alan Watts often pointed out that the present moment is the only reality we ever truly have, yet we spend much of our time mentally living in a future that does not exist. When we learn to release our grip on these imagined fears, we rediscover the peace that has always been available in the present. Anxiety about the future stems from the belief that we must constantly prepare for what lies ahead or prevent potential problems before they happen. This creates a sense of pressure to be ready for every possibility, as if life is a test we might fail. But life is not asking us to predict everything. It is asking us to participate in the moment that is happening now. When we shift our attention from what might happen to what is happening, we notice that most of our fears lose their power. The present moment rarely contains the catastrophe we imagine. It contains sensations, thoughts, choices, and experiences that we can respond to with clarity. One of the reasons we fear the future is because we assume that uncertainty is a threat. But uncertainty is a fundamental feature of life. Without it, nothing new could emerge. No new opportunities, relationships, insights, or transformations. Uncertainty is the space where life creates. When we view it with fear, it becomes overwhelming. When we view it with openness, it becomes possibility. Learning to embrace uncertainty doesn't mean eliminating fear. It means acknowledging that we can move forward even without knowing every step. In that willingness, anxiety loosens its hold. Letting go of anxiety also involves understanding that we cannot control everything and that we are not meant to. Control often feels like safety, but it is an exhausting illusion. We attempt to manage every detail of our lives, believing that if we plan well enough or work hard enough, nothing unexpected will happen. Yet life continues to shift despite our best efforts. Accepting this truth does not make us powerless, it makes us wiser. It frees us from the impossible task of perfect control and allows us to focus on what we can genuinely influence: our actions, our mindset, and the way we respond to the present moment. Another aspect of releasing anxiety is recognizing that we are more resilient than we realize. When we fear the future, we often underestimate our own ability to adapt. We imagine ourselves encountering challenges without the strengths we will inevitably develop by the time we face them. Life equips us gradually. The wisdom, resilience, and skills we need appear through experience, not before it. When we trust our capacity to respond to whatever arises, the future becomes less threatening. We stop bracing for impact and start trusting our inner resources. Letting go of anxiety also means shifting our perspective from scarcity to trust. Anxiety tells us that there won't be enough time, opportunities, stability, love, or support. It paints the future as a landscape of lack. But this scarcity mindset blinds us to the abundance already present and the abundance that continues to grow as we move through life. When we trust that the future will bring what we need, not necessarily what we want in every moment, but what we need for growth and alignment, we relax into a deeper sense of security. This trust allows us to move forward with clarity rather than fear. The present moment becomes our anchor. When we return to it repeatedly, we discover that it is far more manageable than the imagined future. Right now, we can breathe. Right now, we can observe. Right now, we can make a small step, a simple choice, or a thoughtful response. Life unfolds through these small moments, not through the sweeping predictions our minds create. As we learn to live one moment at a time, we realize that we are not behind, we are not failing, and we are not lost. We are simply moving through life at a pace that is natural, meeting each moment with the wisdom we have. Inner awareness is one of the most reliable guides we possess, yet it is also the one we tend to overlook the most. In a world filled with noise, advice, expectations, and external pressures, it becomes easy to forget that within us is a quiet intelligence that continually nudges, warns, redirects, and inspires. Alan Watts often spoke about this deeper awareness, not as something mystical or separate from everyday life, but as a natural part of our being, compass that points us toward alignment when we are willing to listen. This awareness is subtle, patient, and often drowned out by fear or distraction. But when we give it space, it becomes an invaluable source of clarity. Inner awareness expresses itself in many forms. Sometimes it shows up as intuition, a sudden knowing that cannot be explained logically yet feels undeniably true. Sometimes it arrives as discomfort, a gentle signal that something is out of alignment, an environment, a relationship, or a direction that no longer fits. It can also appear as excitement, inspiration, or a sense of resonance when something is right for us, even if it challenges our comfort zone. These signals may seem small, but they are powerful indicators that guide us toward choices that reflect who we truly are rather than who we are expected to be. One of the greatest obstacles to listening to inner awareness is the habit of overthinking. The mind tries to control, analyze, and rationalize everything. It tells stories, creates fears, and pulls us into endless loops of doubt. While the mind is a useful tool, it is not meant to be the master of our lives. Inner awareness speaks in a different way. It is quiet, immediate, and free from fear. It does not argue or compete with the mind, it simply expresses truth. When we slow down enough to sense it, we begin to distinguish the difference between reactive thoughts and genuine insight. Another reason we ignore our inner awareness is the pressure to conform to external expectations. Society often promotes rigid timelines and definitions of success that may not align with our inner path. When this happens, we may silence our intuition because it leads us in a direction that seems unconventional or uncertain. Yet following the inner voice is rarely about choosing the easiest path. It is about choosing the authentic one. It asks us to trust that we are meant to walk our own path, even when others do not fully understand it. The more we listen, the more confident we become in our ability to navigate life from within rather than being pushed by external forces. Inner awareness also guides us through challenges. When difficulties arise, our immediate impulse may be to panic or resist, but awareness encourages us to pause and observe. In that pause, we see the deeper lesson or meaning behind the experience. We notice patterns, emotional triggers, and beliefs that shape our responses. This self-observation transforms challenges from overwhelming obstacles into opportunities for growth. It is not that the challenge becomes easy, but that we meet it with greater wisdom and steadiness. Over time, as we tune into this awareness more consistently, it becomes easier to trust. We begin to notice that when we follow our inner guidance, life flows more smoothly, not without difficulties, but with a sense of alignment. Decisions feel clearer. Relationships become more authentic. Choices feel less like guesses and more like recognition. Instead of racing toward the future or clinging to the past, we find ourselves more grounded in the present moment, responding to life with clarity rather than fear. This inner awareness also helps us cultivate self-compassion. By observing our inner world with curiosity instead of judgment, we develop a kind of relationship with ourselves. We understand our emotions without being consumed by them. We notice our patterns without labeling ourselves as failures. We begin to see that growth is a process, and awareness is the light that helps us navigate that process with gentleness. As we deepen our connection to inner awareness, we realize that it has always been there, quietly guiding us even when we didn't recognize it. It is the voice that encourages us to rest when we are exhausted, to speak when something matters, to leave when something no longer serves us, and to move forward when we are ready. It is the truest part of ourselves, the part that sees clearly even when the surface is chaotic. When we honor this awareness, we begin to live not out of fear or habit, but out of alignment, authenticity, and purpose.